follow on me. We're marching out into the night. Follow on me. We're standing up against a giant. Follow on me. We might be walking in the fire, but if it's where we're meant to be, then on me.
This is our third podcast that we have done. It is On Me 20, and we will have 20 days of 20 guest speakers, and we will have 20 challenges for you. But this will just be a time where we will be able to address some of those things that are going on with the coronavirus, the changes. I mean, this has impacted not just our country, but our world in a crazy, crazy way. And I know that, some of us have been blessed that we still have our jobs. There are many people that don't have their jobs. There are many people that don't know if they'll have a job to go back to. Many people have lost loved ones in the midst of this crazy virus that's going on. And I think there is a lot of uncertainty. I think a lot of people have lost hope. And we want to let you know that there's reasons to continue to live. There's things that we can do to help you, to encourage you, and that fear does not need to be something that we deal with at this time. I tell people all the time, focus on those things that you can control. Don't waste your time on those things that we can't control. Don't be afraid. Don't do the what ifs. And we do still have control of our brains, of our thought process, what we do. We can't control coronavirus. We can't control when our government opens back up. We can't control if we've had businesses and they've shut down. At this point, there's nothing we can do to control that, but we can work in the future and make plans and preparations. We can stay healthy, we can eat right, we can be in the Word every day. There's so much that we need to do that we can stay focused. We can use this time to plan for future things if you don't if you've got a lot of empty time. I know at the beginning of this, I went from 80, 90 hours a week to probably 40, which feels very much like part-time to me. Felt like my face was slammed against the window because it stopped so abruptly, and then came up with this. And so I'm back to the 80, 90 hours a week, and there's got to be a balance in there somewhere. But so we're excited that you're joining us today. Obviously, for you that have not been on the call already, On Me is one of those military terms that for Mark probably was the last words he said to his teammates. And he stood out in the direct line of fire 3 times that day. He was the first Navy SEAL that we lost in Iraq. And as he was getting ready to go up the steps, they'd cleared several houses. And he yelled at his teammates and said, "On me." And they knew what that meant. He was saying, "I got the lead on this. You guys follow us." And as they went up the steps, that's when he drew fire and stood in the line of fire for the 3rd time that day, willingly gave his life to save his teammates. So as I thought through the process and how we had changed, we had months of events planned that were shut down. We lost over $150,000 in funding, but we're still mission strong. And to continue on, we've had to think of creative ways to be able to get additional funding. And those things are what we face every day in our life circumstances. When there's drastic change in our life, where there's tragedy, where there's things, we've got to continue to push forward. So we're so excited that Remi, you have joined us today to be able to do that. We've just got so many amazing speakers that have so much wisdom and leadership and life experience that's caused that. Not just that, I'm writing this book and I have nothing to base this on. And as we read your bio, Remi, it'll be very obvious to those people who don't know you or haven't heard of you. Remi Adeleke was born in Western Africa, but following the death of his father, he and his mother and brother permanently relocated to the Bronx in New York City. After years of making regrettable decisions, Remi joined the Navy in 2002 and later became a Navy SEAL. Ending his successful naval career in 2016, he was led to pursue a career in speaking, consulting, film, TV producing, and acting. In addition to his role in the wildly popular Transformers: The Last Night and the release of his follow-up I Am Second White Chair film, Remi has either acted in and or consulted on the Netflix blockbuster film Six Underground, SEAL Team CBS, and multiple national commercials. As a speaker, Remi travels the country on an average of 3 times a month to speak at corporate events, seminars, leadership conferences, men's and youth events at churches. As a writer, Remi personally penned his 2019 best-selling memoir, Transformed, and he's currently co-writing the Transformed pre-sequel about his mother's odds defying story. Can't wait to read that one.
Yeah.
Remi's writing adventures haven't just been limited to books and social media posts, but films as well. He recently penned The Last Shall Be First, the untold story about the first group of African Americans to serve in special forces, the racial and literal battles they faced to serve. Remi lives in Southern California with his wife, Dr. Jessica Adeleke, and she is a doctor, and their 3 sons, Keaton, Caleb, and Carter. We got a little theme going on there.
Yeah.
Holds a bachelor's degree in organizational leadership from the University of Charleston, West Virginia, as well as a master's degree in strategic leadership with a specialization in strategy as practice from the same university. And Remi, just reading that, I could tell we could talk for hours about your life experiences, about what you went through. I mean, there's so many things there: losing a father, coming from another country, moving here, becoming a Navy SEAL, and then some of the acting. Your Transformers that you were in, I know there's one of them that they do a call sign on a Mike thing, and they say Mark Lee. Was that the one that they do mention Mark's name in, or do you remember?
No, I think that was in the previous one. I was in part 5. I think that might have been in 1 or 2 or 3.
Got it. Well, you know, that's the standard joke is, the West Coast boys are the pretty boys, the Hollywood.
Yeah, Hollywood. And I'm gonna tell you, it wasn't my plan. It wasn't in my cards. I was minding my own business, and my phone rang one day, but it was in God's plans.
Right. Very cool. Well, we're excited to have you here. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. I know you mentioned in there that your wife's a doctor and you've got 3 kids, but tell us a little bit more. What was your family like, growing up? Obviously, you came from a foreign country here, and you were on the East Coast there.
Yeah. So my story kind of starts in Nigeria. Actually, I was born into a very wealthy family. My father was a well-known Nigerian engineer, philanthropist, entrepreneur, businessman. He owned a bunch of different businesses. But unfortunately, in 1987, the Nigerian government stripped my father of his most valuable assets, and one of those assets was the Banana Island, which exists to this day as one of the first man-made islands in the world. And my father had invested millions and millions of dollars and all of his assets into this island because his goal was to kind of change the narrative of how the Westerners viewed Africans as a bunch of uneducated bush people. And so, long story short, the Nigerian government stripped him of that asset. And he immediately went to court to go fight the Nigerian government. He died weeks later. And when he died, our family went from rich, like traveling the world, cars, nannies, living on a compound, living on a beach, to poor, to having absolutely nothing. And my mother is an American. I tell people all the time that my mom and dad's story is the real coming to America story because my mom was this New Yorker. They met at the Metropolitan Museum of Natural History because both of them loved the arts. And my dad was like, I'm a rich African prince. My mom was like, get away from me. I'm this New Yorker. Leave me alone. And my father ended up charming her. They got married, and 5 months later, my mom moved to Africa. So I say all that to say, when my dad died, my mother was just like, I'm going back to what I know. There's no way I'm raising my 2 boys now here in Africa. We went to New York City, where she grew up, specifically the Bronx. And as I grew up in the Bronx, it was a rough environment. We lived in somewhat of a middle class, I want to say building complex, but it was in the smack dab in West Bronx, which is like one of the worst parts of the Bronx, especially at the time, because the crack epidemic was just out of control. I remember walking the streets and seeing, and every time I went to the stores, little kid crackheads strung out on the streets in the park, drug dealers, prostitutes, people getting shot and killed. I got beat up, jumped. And I remember when I was 8 years old, I got beat to a pulp by this guy who just got out of prison. He was 40 years old, about 40 years old, almost 40. And then his 19-year-old nephew and their 10-year-old little brother. And so that was my life. It was a hard life. And as I grew older, I sensed that paternal void in my life. And I, made a decision that, I'm going to find a father to fill that void. And unfortunately, I found the wrong fathers. Instead of looking to my Heavenly Father, I looked to the streets and looked to street culture. hip hop culture, and you know, that led me down a very dark path. I started out stealing from my mother, and then that progressed to stealing from stores, that progressed to stealing from jobs, that progressed to selling drugs, and that progressed to running high level scams. And by the time it's a legal enterprise, well, I was thousands of dollars, you know, a luxury car and all. But you know, my wake up call was when I got involved in a deal with a drug dealer who went back. That's when I made the decision to get out of that street life. But so that a quick snapshot.
Wow. Wow. There's just, so much there that, and I think just even with coronavirus, New York's been one of those places that have been hit the hardest. And so many lives. I can't even imagine how they've dealt with the death and some of the stuff that we see on the news report. And I think that's important for us to remember, no matter what circumstances we're in, that it's easy for us to focus on where we're at, what's surrounding us, how we're living our life right then, and realize that there are so many other people that their lives are so different than from where we are. Absolutely. And I think it's important that we always try to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. Think about someone else, the struggles they're going through. Hopefully, most of us in our lives, unlike you, Remi, I made some pretty bad choices in my life, earlier, and had to suffer those consequences. Luckily, I got my head out of my rear and got, my life turned around. But we need to always make sure that we're thinking about others that are around us. And I think that's one of the things that's so important in the midst of any time we're facing with adversity. But in the coronavirus, that's one of the things that we can be doing is checking on our neighbors, checking on those around us. Do they need help? Do they have food? Are they alone? That's lots of times, I live by myself. So for 6.5 weeks, I've been here by myself. And when you're a people person, and because I was on the road all the time, that was drastic for me. But we need to make sure we don't isolate ourselves. So if you are home by yourself, reach out to somebody else. Don't wait for people to reach out to you. Reach out to others. We need to check in, and that needs to be something that we do all the time. Is make sure that we're serving other people and thinking about other people. When you're doing that, you're not focused inward on yourself. But, and we know that so many people, their circumstances are so different right now in the midst of coronavirus. As I said before, some don't know how they're going to feed their families this next week. And, hopefully they won't get to that place. Hopefully there are people around them. Our veterans that are listening, please know our Random Acts of Kindness, we can help you in those circumstances. If you know veterans, please reach out on their behalf. Our program's set up where the veteran themselves can't come to us, because we've seen veterans just going from charity to charity to see what they can take when they really didn't have that crucial need. That's not the type of people we want to help. So Remi, if you knew somebody, you could say, hey, I know so-and-so, he's lost his job, they've gone to a couple food banks, they're struggling, they need help. And not that we wouldn't still vet them, but that's part of what marks Random Acts of Kindness. He said, when's the last time you paid for a stranger's cup of coffee or a meal or a tank of gas? So we do go up to a $5,000 grant to help in crisis situations, but we need to be there for those around us, especially those of us who haven't lost our jobs, who have that financial ability to support. So if you're one of those that have that ability, please consider donating to America's Mighty Warriors. We've got our program 20 in 2020, where you can sign up to give $20 a month on a reoccurring basis. And if we get 2,020 people this year to do that, that's more than half of our budget. So that's, something simple we can do. Some of you can give at greater levels. But Remi, as we're going through the coronavirus, and our listeners are trying to figure out what can they do, how can they cope, and sometimes, they feel like no one else could be in their shoes, no one else could have it as bad as they do. What was, it sounds like you have a variety of things to select from. What was one of the toughest things that you've had to go through, and what things did you use to get through that? How did you do that?
I've been on a tough thing. I think, one of the toughest things that I had to go through was getting out of my own way, I would say, and making the choice to rise above the expectations that I've set on my life. So often we as human beings, we put these limits on ourselves. We say, I can't be this because of my upbringing, or I can battle against this because I've been defeated in the past. And so I would say the toughest moment in my life was making the decision to leave the Bronx. was making the decision to step out of an environment that I had become so comfortable in and say, you know what, I'm going to try something different. I fought myself. When it came time for me when I finally had the idea of joining the military, like I was in a depressive state. Because for me, it was like the military was totally contrary to everything I was and everything that I believed in at the time. You know, I like my clothes baggy, my hats backwards. I still like my hats backwards. I didn't like authority. I didn't like people telling me what to do. I made fun of the kids in ROTC in high school.
And you
so,
decided to go into the military when you knew that people would be telling you what to do and the structure that was there?
And, you know, and a big part of it too was, for me, it was like either the military, death, or imprisonment.
Yeah.
Because
and those other two weren't very good choices.
Those other two weren't great choices. And, you know, in reality, honestly, I had 2 warrants out for my arrest when I went to go join the Navy.
Wow.
And, you know, going back to what you said earlier about being that help in hand, you know, when you see somebody in need, help them. I ran into a recruiter who did for me what we should be doing for others all the time. She took a chance on me. She took me to both judges after she ran my background. I found out I had 2 warrants out for my arrest. She didn't turn me into the police because they weren't crazy. Weren't like I didn't murder anybody, anything like that.
Right.
But, you know, but she took me to both judges. She took me to the judge in New Jersey and the judge in New York, and she said, "Listen, this kid's made some mistakes. But, you know, though people make mistakes, that doesn't mean that they don't have potential. And, you know, give this kid another chance. Can you please expunge his record so he can join the military?" And both judges, and it was in part because 9/11 had taken place 9 months earlier, both judges unanimously expunged my record, and that's what allowed me to join the Navy. And I say that to say, you know, one, we have to be willing to give people a second chance, especially those who we don't deserve at times to deserve a second chance. And then, you know, along those lines, we have to be willing to give ourselves a second chance, right? Because nobody is harder on me than me. And I'm sure nobody is harder on you than you. And then going back to your original question, you know, one of the toughest decisions I had to make in my life was getting out of my way, stop being so hard on myself and saying, you can't be in the Navy, can't become a Navy SEAL, you're not strong enough, you can't swim, stay in the Bronx and keep doing what you've been doing. So that was probably the hardest thing. I had to step outside of myself, and I had to find that. And I truly believe, you know, being a Christian and being a person of faith, I couldn't find that on my own. I didn't believe in the Lord at that time, but I truly believe that God believed in me, and he just guided me, and he opened up, he gave me little snapshots of what I could be. Yeah. Right? He gave me little snapshots of what I could be if I took that leap of faith, if I took that step. And, you know, again, I didn't believe in the Lord at the time, but he was guiding me, and I answered those little calls, and ultimately those little calls led to me getting out of my way and getting to where I'm at today. So my message to everybody, again, is get out of your way, you know, take that guidance, you know.
Yeah, I think that's so good, and I think that relates so well, you know, especially as we've worked with our veterans in our Helping Heroes Heal program, and so many of them are struggling with post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury. Yeah. And, you know, we've seen one of the hardest things for our men and women in the military is when they transition out of the military.
Yeah.
And as you said, that was so hard to make that decision to leave the Bronx. And lots of times it is so hard to make that decision to get out of the military. Yeah. There may be, you know, you may be to the end of your career where they're like, you're done, get out, you know, you're old. But there may be other times where you're like, okay, you've made that decision. You know the reason you made the decision, whether it's for your, you know, to be with your family or whatever caused you to make that decision at that time to get out of the military. You know in your heart that was the right decision to make, but then you still have to look forward. You have to have a new mission. You know, so many times they get stuck in that downward spiral because they got out and they're like, well, you know, I've got terminal leave, so I don't really have to find anything to do right away. You know, I've got some money coming in. I'll figure it out when I get out. Yeah. And they go down this downward spiral because it's such a loss of the brotherhood, of the connections that were there. And I think it was so good what you said about the second chances, because so many of our men and women that are in our Helping Heroes Heal program that we spoke with, who are, as I said, struggling with PTS and TBI, they feel like they've let their family down. They feel like they've made choices. You know, they've tried to self-medicate with alcohol or with drugs. And so there are a lot of those second chances there that are given to them to get their lives back, you know, on the straight and narrow. And I think that's so crucial and so important to be able to do that. I'm a believer as well, Remi, and I can tell you, I literally wouldn't be alive today if it wasn't for what, you know, Christ did in my life. I knew, I mean, the day that Mark died, the toughest day I've ever endured in my life, or probably will ever endure. And yet I knew, I had confidence in God. I knew his character. I knew he'd walked me through death before. I've been a widow for 25 years. And so he'd proved himself to me. But he knew, he trusted me. He knew that I wouldn't think I was strong enough to get through, but that I would trust him to get me through, that I would have confidence in him and his strength. And that night after Mark died, and you know, I was actually at my Bible study, and we'd been celebrating my birthday that night, and my girlfriend had given me the willow tree angels. Those are the wooden angels with the wire wings, and the one she gave me was courage. And she said, you just remind me as such a woman of courage with all you've been through in your life, and that you still love God and you're still positive. And you know, little did we know how much more courage would be required. But I left after I got the phone call from my son telling me to come home. I left, and I said, please be praying, something's not right. And got home. Of course, they'd followed me home, and you know, we began to try to process what we just heard, that Mark had been killed. And after everybody left later that night, I just wanted somebody to hold me and tell me it was going to be okay. And as a widow, I didn't have anybody there. My oldest son, Christopher, was there. And he met his wife. He served in the Marines, met his wife in Okinawa, and in the beginning of their marriage, before they had 5 children. She would go home every year for 6 weeks, and she was home. So he stayed at my house that night and said, Mom, I'm going to try to get some sleep. And I knew there was no way that sleep was coming to me. And as I said, I just wanted somebody to hold me, and there was nobody there. I didn't have a husband. And so I went and grabbed my Bible and opened it. I don't care who you are. That is just not normal in those circumstances. But, you know, it sounds bad, but by default, because there wasn't anybody there, I turned, you know, I knew God was the only other person. I knew he was my comfort and strength. And I went to my Bible, and it opened to Psalms 27. It starts out, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? And the second to last verse in that chapter says, I would have lost hope if I had not believed I'd see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Amen. Wait on the Lord. Be of good courage, and he will strengthen your heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. And I think that's so important for what we're facing now in the midst of coronavirus. We don't need to be fearful. We don't need to be afraid. That's not going to change the circumstances. We need to have hope. And that hope is given to us, you know, by those of us who believe, you know, in Christ. And we know he's coming back for us. We know, you know, for me, that brings me peace. Even if I get coronavirus, you know, and that's how God chooses to take my life, you know, from here to eternity, I know what's on the other side. There's no pain, no sorrow, no sickness. But so I love those things that you shared, and how important and how crucial that is in there. Were there other things that you would like to encourage those that are listening or will be listening to this in the future, things that they can do either in the transition process as they're coming out of the military, if they're struggling right now in those things, for those that are listening that aren't military, you know, all these things, principles that you learn in combat, or, you know, leadership principles we can use in anything. But what would you say? What would those be?
I would say a few things. I would say, you know, one, it's always good to have a plan. You know, we have a saying in the SEAL teams: plan, prepare, execute. You know, everything that we do in the teams, you know, we plan it. You know, we have another saying in the SEAL teams: dive your plan, plan your dive, or plan your dive, dive your plan. You know, and so I think for military people, for service men and women who are getting out, it's important that you have a plan and be prepared. That plan, you might have to change that plan. You might have to flex, right? But it's important that you have a plan, you have a route, you have an idea of what it is that you want to do. And another thing I try to tell people all the time is make sure that whatever it is that you want to do, there's some type of passion behind it. There's a passion behind it, because that's going to carry you through. I have a saying, you know, people ask me all the time, they say, Remi, why is it that you know, 250 guys show up to SEAL training, but only 20 guys make it, or 22 guys make it? And why is attrition rate like, 80, 90%? And I tell them, I say, it's because the guys who don't make it, they don't have a deep-rooted emotional reason as to why they are there. Right? Yeah. A lot of them have a superficial reason as to why they are there. Right? Yeah. Their superficial reason may be, I want to be an Navy SEAL because I want to be cool, or I want to shoot guns, or I want to, have the girls like me. Those are superficial reasons. And guess what happens when you face adversity in SEAL training? You're getting beat in the sand and cold.
Those things,
and all
other things don't matter, do they?
that superficial idea quickly turns into a bad idea, right? Yes. But when you have a deep-rooted emotional reason as to why you want to do something, that anchors you and carries you. And for me, when I was in SEAL training, my deep-rooted emotional reason why is I have nothing left. I have failed so much in life in the past. I cannot fail at this again. And that carried me through a lot of hard times in SEAL training. And that's the same principle I try to apply in what I do today, with whether it's writing, whether it's hosting, whether it's producing, whatever it is, I have to have a deep-rooted emotional reason as to why I'm doing it, because I am going to face adversity. I was having a conversation with somebody a couple weeks ago, and I said, listen, life sucks. Life is hard. Like, it's just hard. It just is.
Yeah, it's not meant to be perfect here.
It's not meant to be perfect here. And, and so when it's not perfect, and you gotta be rooted, you have to have that why. And so, like, even in, I'm working on a project right now, and can't go into all the details, but I was hired to write a TV show, and it's been really, really challenging. But I have a deep-rooted why, and that why is this story must be told, because it's an inspirational, powerful story that can inspire and educate so many people. So though there are setbacks, and I'm having times where I'm getting stuck, or I'm dealing with certain things with the agents and the lawyers, I'm rooted because I know why I'm here. So again, going back to your question, for service members, get ready, find something that you're passionate about. And when you find that, find your deep-rooted emotional reason as to why you want to do it, and hold on to that. The second thing I tell people all the time, especially service members, and all of this applies to everybody, not just people getting out of the military, but, another thing that I try to say is it's important to realize that nothing in life is a waste. Nothing is a waste. Like, everything can be used. And just to kind of give, add some context so people understand this. When I was a kid, my mother, the public education system was horrible in the Bronx. It was really, really bad. And my mom she was a teacher in the South Bronx. And so she knew firsthand how bad that public education system was. Right. And I think at the time it was like 20% of kids from the Bronx went to college. And it was like a ridiculous statistic. And she didn't want us to be part of that statistic. She wanted us to be educated. She didn't want us to drop out of high school. And so on top of sending us to public school, she would homeschool us. And my brother and I hated it because she would make my brother and I read the New York Times, read like books. Like, I'm not talking about little like kid books. I'm talking about grown-up books. And then she would make us write reports. And the reports had to be near perfect. And if they weren't near perfect, she would make us pick another article, another book, read it all over again. And
good for her.
For it. Yeah. And
that's awesome.
And I hated it. And I always thought it as a waste. I was always like, "Ma, this is stupid." And I would curse my mom behind her back, and because she wouldn't let us go outside and play. And I just got so upset. But it was a purpose behind it. Fast forward to when I got into the SEAL teams, there's a specific job within the SEAL teams I can't go into details about, where it requires a lot of writing. It's an intelligence type job. And a lot of SEALs don't want to do it because they're just like, man, the last thing I want to be doing on my downtime is writing an intelligence report. Right. I want to be relaxing. But because I had this background in writing from my mother, when my OIC asked for volunteers, I raised my hand and I said, I don't mind writing, right? And then that translated into when I got out of the military, I was able to write my own book. I'm writing now TV shows and films and other stuff. And so nothing is wasted. What you may be doing now, what you may have to do when you get out to pay the bills, it may seem menial to you. It may not seem important. It may not seem like it's attached to the dream that you have. But I guarantee you that there are lessons within that job or occupation that will prepare you, that can prepare you for your dream or for your future. You know, another good example is speaking. You know, before I got cast to work on Transformers, you know, and even doing some of this other acting stuff that I've done and been able to do is, you know, I was a public speaker, traveling, I would speak at different places. And so when I got on set and I was in front of the whole crew, you know, 100+ people on a movie set, and I had to deliver lines or say something, there was no stage fright. Yeah. There was no worry because I had that nothing is wasted. Nothing is wasted. So again, I say that to say the veterans getting out and as well as people in general, don't forsake the small beginnings. You know, don't forsake the small beginnings. Humble yourself. Be humble in where you are, because there are so many lessons if you could just humble yourself that you could apply in the future. And you know who helped teach me that lesson? I shared this story with you on our call. You know, Mark Lee. You know, he was he was the first SEAL that gave me a lesson in humility. And you know, when I was in Buds, a lot of people know my story, know that I was in Buds. Like I probably had like one of the longest tenures in Buds. But I started out I never quit. I just stayed in Buds and started on a roll.
Over and over.
Yeah, just Buds a lot. But my first class was 250. And Mikey Mansour was in that class. He was actually my boat crew, and just a lot of great guys were in that class. Ray, Baviera, and just so many other awesome men. And I got to Hell Week, and when I was in Hell Week, I got pneumonia, psych, and rhabdo. So I got med rolled on Tuesday of Hell Week. And so I had to start all over again from day one with 251. And Mark Lee was in 251. And when I had to start all over, I was just so prideful. Because I was just like, here I am, this kid who made it from the Bronx. You know, it's not that many African Americans in SEAL training as it is. I'm one of the only ones in the class. I'm listening to hip hop. I mean, I'm just this prideful, nobody can tell me anything person.
Right.
And I remember it was like the 2 days before we were going to start Hell Week with 251, Mark Lee got fed up and he flipped out on me. And he was just like, you need to humble yourself, or you're not gonna make it. Like you need to stop acting like that. And I had my little pride. And I'm just like, yeah, whatever. But after I made it through Hell Week, you know, I really took his words to heart. And I was just like, wow, you know, because we were in the same boat crew towards the end of Hell Week, because so many guys quit, and you know, we were about the same height, so we almost ended up in the same boat crew. And we all ended up in the same boat crew. And I just remember kind of like, yeah, he's right. You know, I need to be humble. And then I ended up getting kicked out of SEAL training and dive phase because I didn't really learn my lesson as hard as I should have. And I partying on the weekend and going to clubs and telling girls at the bar I'm a Navy SEAL when I'm not. I'm just in Bucks. And, you know, that led me down a really dark path. And, you know, the Bible talks about, you know, those who exalt themselves will be humbled, but those who humble themselves will be exalted.
So
and,
good.
You know, I exalted myself and I got humbled. I got kicked out of SEAL training, sent to 1st Marine Division. And when I was there, I thought about Mark and I thought about, man, the lesson of humility. And when I went back to SEAL training a year and a half later, there was no clubbing. There's no telling girls at the bar on the SEAL. There's no partying. Yeah. It was just, I'm gonna keep my mouth shut, do my job, serve the guys to my right and left, and get through the program. And I did. So Mark Lee is the first SEAL that gave me my lesson in humility, you know, so.
Very cool. No, that's cool, Remi. You know, we, in the beginning thought we'd, you know, try to make these last about 20 minutes. We realized the first day that wasn't going to work. So thank you for being willing to stick around more. But as we kind of tie this up, I would like to know, is there anything you want to promote? Any books that you would like to highlight or things that you're doing? You know, we appreciate that you donated your time to be able to do this, and your time is very valuable. And we'd like to, you know, give back and give you a moment if there's something that we can do to check you out, to follow you, projects, books.
Yeah, you know, I'd like to promote America's Mighty Warriors. That's what I like to promote. America's Mighty Warriors is doing awesome work, serving, you know, veterans and serving people outside of the military and family members of veterans. And so I want to promote America's Mighty Warriors. I want to encourage every single person to donate. to this organization, ministry, service organization, you know, so that they can continue to have what they need to continue to do what they do. Debbie and everybody at America's Mighty Warriors has been a blessing to so many people. And I think that we're in a season right now where obviously finances are going to be tight. And we have to really pick and choose who we're going to help out or what nonprofits we're going to give to. And this is a nonprofit that I want people to give to because they're doing good work and they're serving people. At the end of the day, to me, that's about life is about serving people. I mean, years ago it was about serving me. But after I came to the Lord, it was about serving people. And so Debbie's doing that. So that's what I like to promote.
Thank you, Remi. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
We've also got a few questions and answers. Ryan, if you want to jump on and let us know some of those questions that you got.
Yeah,
So Ryan,
what's happening, Remi? What a story, brother. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
First person came in and said, we yelled for you when you were in Bud's 266 as Charlie, our son, was running with you.
Yeah, Charlie Keaton.
There you go. That's it.
I love Charlie Keaton. I mean, you know, I usually wear my CK4 shirt. Shout out to the Keaton family. God bless you. I love you if you're listening to this. I appreciate you. Charlie Keaton meant so much and still means so much to me. We were in Buds together. He helped me out on one of my swims. We were in Delta Platoon together. Every time I saw him, the first thing that I did was smile because you can't help but smile when you're dealing with Chuck. And I loved him. So God bless you. And I'm going to be repping Charlie Keating until the day I leave this earth. God bless you all. And I appreciate the Keating family.
That's awesome, man. This one gives me chill bumps too. Remi, my 13-year-old son wants to know what advice you have for him to continue to build self-discipline in a time that limits our resources.
Ooh, that's a good question. How to build self-discipline in a time with limited resources.
A 13-year-old coming at you.
Yeah, that's a good.
Right.
You know, challenge yourself. You know, I know. I can't remember who it is, but there's somebody that talks about do hard things. Like find those hard things to do. And it's easy to find something hard to do. Like you're 13 years old, maybe you're in school and maybe it's hard for you to knock out 3 weeks of work in 1 week, right? I know that's an extreme. I'm just pulling an example out, but that's something hard that you can do to begin to condition yourself from a discipline standpoint. For me, when I was preparing to go to SEAL training, I was skinny. When I decided I wanted to be a SEAL, I could barely do a push-up. You know, I could barely run. You know, I definitely couldn't swim, but every single day I challenged myself in each one of those areas, and I kept a logbook. And so one day I only did 20 push-ups, and the next day I was like, I'm going to do 22 push-ups, no matter how hard it may be. And then the next day I'm going to do 24 push-ups, right? So just find whatever it is that's hard for you to do, and you know what's hard for you to do, just do it and do it extra hard. You know what's something that's hard for you to do, whether it's not playing a video game or reading a book in a day. Challenge yourself that way.
We had a guest yesterday too, Remi, that said something to the lines of "Stop being good and start being great." You know, so I love that. That's awesome. So I guess there's a Remi's rocking that. Remi's rocking that Forged T-shirt. So obviously somebody's looking out on your gear there, brother. It said, "Is he doing the Murph workout on Memorial Day?"
I have, and I will.
There you go.
Yes, most definitely.
That's cool. Let me throw one last at you, and then we'll get to our prayer session. So hold with us, folks, for a second here. Big question I have is I have had two very close family members pass when I was younger. Mm-hmm. I always feel like they are watching over me. Mm-hmm. My question is that normal?
Is that normal?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I can't speak to that, but I'll leave that up to you.
I don't know. I mean, I know the Bible talks about a cloud of witnesses that watch over us. So they're a great cloud of witnesses. So maybe I won't know I won't fully know the answer to that question until I die and go to heaven. But I want to believe so.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely one of those things, that the Bible doesn't tell us for sure they see us. Yeah, they don't see us. So, there's certain things we weren't meant to know. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things that our little pea brains wouldn't be able to understand anyway, even if God told us. But I can tell you there are times, when I do feel like Mark's looking down. He's watching.
Absolutely.
You
Amen.
know, he
Amen.
sees what's going on. So, but again, we won't know till we get to heaven, will we, Remi? But anyway.
We know. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But thank you so much. Oh my gosh, this has just been so encouraging to have you on and to hear your life story. I'm not sure that, you know, this might lead into something else. Didn't start this planning on doing anything other than the 20 days, but as I get on with you, the guests that we've had, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much more that we could talk about. And so I think that's kind of something I'm toying with. That's where God's directed me to maybe do this once a week. And so we, you know, start with our 20 guests, have them back on long term and get to know you a little bit more, hear a little bit more of your story. Absolutely. But thank you for donating your time. We're so grateful. You know, I just think of the On Me and Mark's words, you know, saying, follow me, I got this. And as they went up there, you know, he gave his life. And I think of the first On Me. That's why our time is 15:13, is John 15:13. Greater love has no one than this, than they lay down their life for their friends. Yes. And the first example we had was Christ. Amen. And I think of him as he hung on that cross with all of our sins on him. And he said, on me, I'll take it all. Amen. And that's why we can do what we do. I hope you were encouraged. I hope this made a difference in your life today. For those of you that are listening, I hope that now you'll say, on me, I'm going to live the rest of this day. I'm going to live every day forward, being a leader, taking these things, making those decisions with your will, not with your feelings, not with your circumstances, but with your will. You will make these decisions. Follow some of the advice that Remi's given us in those exhortations that I gave as well, to be able to be a life changer, be a leader in your own life, in your family's life, where you work, in your community. And I think of how Mark ends his amazing last letter home. To my family and friends, do me a favor. Pass on the kindness, the love, the precious gift of human life. God bless each one of you. Hopefully we'll see you back tomorrow for our On Me 20 podcast number 4. Thank you. God bless. Thanks, Remi.
God bless. Thanks for having me. Yes, Mama Lee. Bye, everybody.
When fear flashes its teeth like a lion, when evil roars and walls begin to shake, there's a strength that's not my own. There's a fire in my bones. He is with me and his hand is ever on me. Follow on me. We're marching out into the night. Follow on me. We're standing up against a giant. Follow on me. We might be walking in the fire, but if it's where we're meant to be, then on me.